Welcome everyone. Did you know that up to 32% of the cost of a clinical trial could be spent just on finding patients and matching them? Why is this process so complicated? The reason is because clinical protocols, specifically the inclusion and exclusion criteria, are written as unstructured free text. Matching these complicated criteria against patient data requires a lot of manual review, which can be time consuming and inefficient. Now, there are a lot of efforts going on already using LLMs to improve this process. But what if we could actually combine FHIR along with the power of LLM to further streamline this process? In this video, I will show you how we are taking that approach. Let's jump into the demo. Okay, so this is a sample protocol that we will be using for the demo today. This is a trial that I just found on clinicaltrials.gov and I just downloaded it as a PDF. Whatever we are discussing here could be applied to any protocol and it could be directly imported or converted into a PDF. So what I'm going to go is I'm going to go to our app and I'm going to be using Epic for the demo today, but whatever I'm showing today can work with any FHIR server or any EHR2. So I'm going to go into our Epic sandbox that we have created. So if you're not familiar with our app, we have basically this concept of workspaces. Workspaces can connect to any backend database, including an EHR or a FHIR server. So in today's demo, I'm using basically Epic as the backend and I'm connected to Epic Sandbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to the app and then I'm going to go ahead and upload that protocol that we were looking for at. So I'm just going to type a name in here. It can be any name and then I'm going to go and upload that particular PDF file and make it go through the processing. So what is happening right now is that we are actually passing that protocol through a LLM and then doing some additional processing on it where it is going to extract all the inclusion and exclusion criteria and come up with a list that we can use it then later to match it to patients. So it has already done that. And if I go ahead and click on this view attributes list, what you will see is that all of the inclusion and exclusion criteria that were there have been extracted as individual list items. Now, this is again step one, which we can use to, kind of make the matching better. But what we are also doing is if I go into the details of any of those criteria, that we are actually trying to create a FHIR query based on that free text. So in this case, you can see that it is a simple demographic query. But if you look at this, where it was a type 2 diabetes mellitus, it has actually created a query and then combining the terminology server also found out the equivalent ICD-10 code for that. And again, this can be adjusted based on the database. If I look at HbA1c, you'll see that it has created an observation query. It has also, we are creating some comparative creators there. But then this is not possible in every case, right? So if it is a consent one, there is no way to create a FHIR query. So we are still managing the text and that text is being tracked in every way, anyway, because we want to kind of make sure is that if we are not able to, kind of match using FHIR, then we will use this as a backup. So this is again, step one of how we have taken a protocol and extracted it a little more than it being just a blob of text. Now I'm going to go back into my, sandbox and I'm going to actually log into Epic to try to match a patient based with this protocol. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be using what is called as a standalone launch, but whatever I'm showing in here can be done from within a tab, within a patient chart in Epic. We're just using like the EHR launch because it's easy to demo. So I'm just going to copy the launch URL from here and let me just go ahead and quickly log in. Okay, so I am logged in for a patient, Camila Lopez. If you have worked with Epic Sandbox, you probably recognize this patient. This is a patient that is commonly used for most of the patient demos. And I can take a look at all of the patient's data in here. But that's not what we are interested in right now. I'm interested in this tab, clinical trials. So what I'll do is I will go and say that I want to do a match for this patient to see if it is a match for the protocol that we uploaded. So I'm just going to go click on that and click on the start button. And again, what it is doing behind the scenes now is that it is going to pull in all the FHIR data of the patient, as well as all the documents, the unstructured document, the clinical notes and everything. And it's going to compare it one by one with the criteria of the protocol that we had extracted to find a match. So I'll give it a few minutes to refresh. Okay, so it has completed. So if I go ahead and click on the view report now, you'll see that again, it wasn't a match and it's not able to match many criteria because this patient is, not diabetic. But it did match like some of the criteria in there. Now, if I go back to this particular patient chart and I look at some of the documents that are coming from Epic, we'll see that there is, not much data that it could actually extract. So to make it a little more interesting, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually bring in a sample note that we have created, which is very close to like a patient that would match for that clinical trial. So this is like a very simple clinical note. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add this note to this particular patient's chart. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to say that I want to add that note to the patient chart. I'll just give it a note. And I'm going to click upload. So now that note is available, and with that note being available, I'm going to run the match again. So let me just go ahead and start it, and I'll wait for a few seconds to refresh. Okay, so it took a little longer because it obviously had a new note, but now if I go and click on the report, you will see that it actually says it's eligible, and it is because we pretty much gave it all the notes. But the key thing to note is that it was actually able to go and extract individual elements from that particular note. So if you look at it, like, it knows that the HbA1c is 8.1 and the BMI is 34.3, which is the values that we had embedded into the note itself. So again, the idea here being that, it is able to use a combination of FHIR, but then have a fallback on the unstructured notes to come up with the best match. Now, what I used here was basically a way to match individual patients to protocols. This is not typically how, most scenarios would work. So what we can also do is we can do basically matching at a bulk level using the FHIR groups. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my workspaces list. I'm going to go ahead and close this as we start the new session. So this time I'm going to log into Epic not as a single patient mode. So this is not like where I'm in the patient chart, but I'm actually going to try to run some bulk queries. So again, I'm going to start with here. But the main thing I want to do is I'm not going to select a launch patient, which is basically telling the system that I'm going to read multiple patients, whichever patients are available to me as my permissions. So I'm going to copy the URL from here, go into the new application, start a new session. So let me just go ahead and log in. And again, if you notice in here, this time I was not asked for a patient. I'm not on a particular patient. So what I can do from here is if I now say I want to start a new match, I can still select that protocol, but then I can select a group. And a group is basically, we can import groups that are existing in FHIR on the Epic side, or we can create groups and match patients. In this case, I've created a group that I've added few patients. So I'm going to just say like, okay, I want to run that protocol across all the patients in that particular group. And I'm going to go ahead and start it. So now it's going to run the same process, but this time it is going to run that process across all of those patients. So again, I'll give it a few seconds to complete it. Okay, so it has completed, takes a little longer, but what I can see is I have a report now. So if I go into the report, I will see that it again ran across these 3 patients. And again, like what we'll see is that it is saying that the other 2 did not have enough information. I cleaned up the patients, here. But for Daisy, now it is saying is that it is not eligible. And if I go into the criterion here, you will see that it is not eligible because it was able to find a particular exclusion criteria which is for pregnancy. So this is again, based on the FHIR data. So if we go back into the patient's, chart in here, what we are pulling from Epic, I can actually see that in the conditions, there's pregnancy listed as a problem. So again, the idea here is to show how we could actually combine FHIR data with unstructured data to make these clinical trials matching a lot easier. There are a lot of ways this can be improved as we are working on, creating more better terminologies, better matching from individual criteria as we look more and more into it. Hopefully that gives you a picture of how you can combine LLM and FHIR to improve patient matching for clinical trials. If you are working in this area, we would love to collaborate as we further develop this solution. Please reach out to us, and thanks again for watching.